If you insist on appearing before a duke, Clara, you should at least dress like a woman society has already buried. Lady Beatrice Whitmore dropped the morning gown onto the bed. The metal hooks struck the wooden frame with sharp clicks. A stale smell of camphor rose from the black fabric. Clara touched one sleeve. The muslin felt cold and rough beneath her fingers. She had last worn the gown 10 months earlier, when her father was buried beside her mother. "You cannot be serious," Clara said. Beatrice adjusted the emerald necklace at her throat. "I am always serious where your future is concerned." Lavinia stood beside the mirror in a pale blue gown. She lifted Clara's silver hair comb and held it against her golden curls. "Black suits her," Lavinia said. "Every ballroom needs a ghost." Cecily stood near the door and lowered her eyes. Tonight, the Duke of Ashbourne was holding a winter ball at Blackthorn Hall. The evening would raise money for soldiers' widows, though most guests came because the unmarried Duke might finally choose a wife. Beatrice had prepared Lavinia for weeks. Clara had learned of her own invitation only an hour ago. "My mourning period ended last month," Clara said. "Did it?" Beatrice replied. "Grief becomes you so naturally that I had not noticed." Lavinia laughed. Clara lifted the dress. The hem was worn almost white where it had brushed the church floor. She could refuse to wear it, but refusal always carried a price. Beatrice controlled the household accounts, Clara's letters, and her father's estate papers. In 12 days, Clara would turn 25. Her father had once told her that something important would change on that birthday. He had died before explaining what he meant. "You will attend," Beatrice said. "Remain close enough to be seen, but not so close that anyone mistakes you for one of my daughters. I am Sir Edmund's daughter." The room became silent. Beatrice's smile remained, but her eyes hardened. "Your father's name protected you for long enough. Tonight, you will remember that Lavinia's future affects this family." Clara understood. She was not being taken as a guest, but as a contrast. Beside Clara's old black dress, Lavinia would appear younger and more desirable. Clara carried the gown behind the folding screen and changed without help. As she straightened the skirt, she noticed that the left side of the hem hung lower than the right. She pressed her fingers along the inner seam. Something small and hard shifted beneath the lining. It felt like metal. Clara found tiny stitches hidden inside the fold. The faded brown thread was different from the newer repairs. She recognized the neat pattern. Mrs. Bell had sewn it. Mrs. Bell had served Clara's mother for 20 years. Beatrice dismissed her after Sir Edmund died and accused her of stealing lace. Clara had never believed it. She reached for the sewing scissors. "Clara," Cecily whispered from the other side of the screen. "They are waiting." Clara stopped. If she opened the seam now, Beatrice might return and discover whatever had been hidden there. She lowered the skirt. The object rested against her ankle like a warning. When Clara stepped out, Lavinia smiled. "You look as though you have come to bury the Duke." Beatrice fastened a black brooch at Clara's throat. "You will not approach his grace unless he speaks to you. You will not discuss your father's estate. If anyone asks why you are dressed this way, you will say it was your choice." "And if I do not?" Clara asked. Beatrice leaned closer. Her rose perfume was heavy and sweet. "Then the village school may discover that its coal account cannot be paid this winter." Clara went still. 27 children depended on that school. Beatrice knew exactly where to place the knife. "I understand." Beatrice left with Lavinia. Cecily remained behind. After the door closed, Cecily hurried toward Clara. "Do not drink anything Lavinia gives you tonight." "What has she planned?" "I heard her ask which wine leaves the darkest stain. She told Mother that by midnight, no one would be looking at your face." "And what did you say?" Cecily's cheeks turned red. "Nothing." Her silence was not the same as cruelty, but it allowed cruelty to grow. "I do not need your pity," Clara said. "I am sorry." "Then do something more difficult. If anything happens tonight, do not lie." The main carriage took Beatrice, Lavinia, and Cecily. Clara was sent to a smaller carriage near the servants' entrance. The compartment smelled of damp wool and old straw. The window rattled as the horses moved into the winter darkness. Clara sat alone, one hand resting over the heavy place in the hem. Blackthorn Hall appeared an hour later, glowing with hundreds of candles. Music drifted through the open doors. Carriages crowded the drive. Clara entered after her family had already been announced. The conversations around her softened. "Is that a mourning dress?" one woman whispered. At a ball, another replied. Clara kept walking. Across the ballroom stood Adrian Blackthorne, Duke of Ashbourne. He was tall, dark-haired, and dressed in formal black. He watched the glittering crowd like a man enduring a punishment. Beatrice was already guiding Lavinia toward him. Clara moved to the edge of the room beneath a marble balcony. For one brief moment, she believed she might be left alone. Then Lavinia appeared between the dancers, carrying 2 glasses of red wine. Her smile was radiant. "Dear sister," she said as she approached, "you look as though the evening could use a little color." Lavinia stopped 1 step away from Clara. The red wine trembled near the rims of both glasses. Candlelight moved across the crystal, making the liquid look almost black. Clara kept her eyes on Lavinia's face. "You should be more careful," Clara said. Lavinia smiled. "I am always careful." She turned as if someone had called her name. Her shoulder struck Clara's arm, and 1 glass tipped forward. Cold wine splashed across Clara's bodice. A second wave struck the skirt. The liquid ran in bright red lines over the faded black muslin. Several guests gasped. Then Lavinia caught the edge of Clara's gown with her shoe. The hem pulled tight. Clara heard the stitches tear. Fabric ripped near her ankle. The hidden weight inside the lining broke free and struck the polished floor. A tiny brass key spun between their feet. For one breath, the ballroom was silent. Then someone laughed. Lavinia placed 1 hand over her mouth. "Oh, Clara! What have you hidden in that dreadful dress?" Beatrice approached with perfect concern on her face. "My poor child! I told you that gown was not suitable." Clara looked at the wine dripping from Lavinia's empty glass. "You told me it was the only gown I was permitted to wear." Beatrice's expression did not change. "You are upset. Grief often confuses the memory." More guests turned toward them. The wet fabric clung to Clara's skin. The torn hem exposed the old petticoat beneath it. Lavinia bent toward the key. Before she could touch it, a black boot came down beside the brass object. The music stopped. Adrian Blackthorne stood between Clara and the watching crowd. He looked at the key, then at the torn seam. His gaze moved to the wine on Clara's dress and settled on Lavinia. "Did you fall?" he asked. "It was an accident, Your Grace." An accident usually embarrasses the person responsible. His voice was calm, but it carried farther than a shout. Adrian bent and picked up the key. A small emblem had been carved into its head. It was a rose surrounded by thorns. His hand became still. Someone near the musicians whispered that Clara had brought a servant's key to a ducal ball. A few guests laughed. Adrian turned toward the sound. The laughter died at once. He removed his formal coat. A murmur moved through the room. The coat was black wool, lined with dark silver silk. The blackthorn crest was embroidered across one shoulder. Adrian stepped closer and placed it around Clara. The wool was warm from his body. It covered the wine, the torn fabric, and most of the dress Beatrice had chosen to shame her. "You need not ruin your coat, Your Grace," Clara said. "The coat is washable." His eyes moved to Beatrice. "Cruelty is more difficult to remove." Beatrice gave a nervous laugh. "Surely Your Grace understands that young ladies sometimes tease one another. I understand that one woman carried 2 glasses. I understand that the other had nowhere to step aside." His gaze fell to Lavinia's shoe. "And I understand the difference between spilling wine and trapping a hem beneath one's heel." Lavinia's face lost color. Adrian looked at Clara's stained mourning gown. "Who made you come to my house dressed this way?" Beatrice moved closer before Clara could answer. "Clara has always been sensitive. She may have misunderstood." Adrian looked directly at Clara. "Did you misunderstand?" No one had asked for her version of events. Clara remembered the village school and the 27 children who needed coal. She also remembered Cecily's request that she not remain silent. "I understood exactly what happened," Clara said. Beatrice's breath caught. Adrian held out the brass key. Clara reached for it. Their fingers touched for a moment. His hand was warm. Hers trembled from the cold. He noticed. He placed the key in her palm and closed her fingers over it. "Keep it," he said. "Someone went to considerable trouble to hide it." Lavinia tried to laugh. Perhaps Clara sewed it there herself. She has always enjoyed secrets. "I did not know it was there," Clara said. "The gown belonged to her mother," Beatrice added quickly. "It has been stored for years." Adrian's attention shifted. "Her mother? Lady Eleanor Whitmore, a woman's voice came from behind him. Eleanor, the Dowager Duchess Helena Blackthorne, stood near the center of the ballroom. She stared at the emblem on the key. Then she looked at the black gown beneath Adrian's coat. "Come closer, child." Clara obeyed. Helena touched the embroidery near Clara's collar. The black thread had faded, but the pattern remained. A small rose surrounded by sharp leaves. This was Eleanor's mark. Beatrice stepped forward. "Your Grace, Clara is tired. We should take her home." "No," Clara said. The word came before fear could stop it. The entire room heard. Beatrice turned slowly. Clara met her eyes. "I will not leave yet." For the first time that evening, anger broke through Beatrice's smile. Adrian faced the musicians. "The dancing is finished for now." A shocked murmur rose from the guests. "A chair will be brought for Miss Whitmore beside my mother. Anyone who finds her humiliation amusing may leave my house." No one moved. A servant hurried forward with a chair. Helena guided Clara toward it. Adrian remained beside them, watching Beatrice and Lavinia. When Clara sat, his coat gathered heavily around her shoulders. She looked down at the brass key. Helena leaned closer. "Your father sent me a message before he died," she whispered. It contained one instruction. Clara's fingers tightened around the key. "What instruction?" Helena glanced toward Beatrice, who was speaking urgently to Lavinia across the room. Then she lowered her voice. "He said that when this key appeared, we must find the box before your stepmother did." Clara stared at the brass key in her palm. Before she could ask another question, Helena rose from her chair. "Come with me." Adrian moved beside them. He did not touch Clara, but his presence blocked the curious guests from approaching. Helena led them through a side door and into a private sitting room. The music slowly resumed behind them. It sounded distant now, like something happening in another world. A fire burned beneath a white marble mantel. Clara remained wrapped in Adrian's coat. The heavy wool still carried the faint scent of cedar and winter air. Helena closed the door. "Your mother was my dearest friend," she said. Clara looked at her in surprise. "My father never mentioned that." Sir Edmund did not know the whole story. Helena walked toward a small writing desk. She opened a drawer and removed a faded letter. When Adrian was 9, a fire broke out in the old stable. A beam fell across the doorway. Everyone believed he was trapped. Clara glanced at Adrian. His expression had become unreadable. "My mother went inside." "She did," Helena said. Eleanor covered him with her cloak and carried him through the smoke. She burned both hands badly. Adrian looked at Clara. "I remember the roses embroidered on her sleeve." His voice was quieter than it had been in the ballroom. "The same roses are on your dress." Clara touched the faded embroidery near her throat. Her mother had died when Clara was 7. She remembered soft hands, a warm singing voice, and the smell of lavender. She had never known those hands had once been scarred. Helena unfolded the letter. "Your father sent this 6 days before he died. Most of it concerns ordinary matters. The final sentence does not." She gave the letter to Clara. The handwriting was weak, but clearly her father's. "If the key hidden with Eleanor's roses ever returns, trust Clara. Help her find the box before Beatrice does." Clara read the line twice. "What box?" "He did not say," Helena replied. Adrian faced Clara. "Where did your father keep important documents?" "In his study. Beatrice searched it after the funeral. Then the box may still be in the house." "No." Clara closed her fingers around the letter. "My father stopped trusting the house." A memory returned to her. During the final week of his life, Sir Edmund had insisted on visiting the village church. He had been too weak to ride, so 2 servants had carried him in a closed carriage. When he returned, the brown leather document box usually kept beneath his desk was gone. "The church," Clara said. Adrian watched her closely. "My father visited Reverend Hale shortly before he died. He took a document box with him." A sharp knock sounded at the door. Beatrice entered before anyone invited her. Lavinia followed several steps behind. The wine stain on Clara's dress had disappeared beneath Adrian's coat, but Lavinia kept staring at it. "There you are," Beatrice said. "Clara is unwell. We must leave immediately." "I am not unwell," Clara replied. "You have suffered a humiliating accident. I suffered a deliberate one." Lavinia lowered her eyes. Beatrice's face tightened. "We will discuss your behavior at home." Adrian stepped forward. "Miss Whitmore will decide where she goes." Beatrice gave him a careful smile. "Your Grace, Clara is part of my household. She is 24 years old, not 4. Beatrice turned to Clara. Take off His Grace's coat and come with me. Clara felt the old fear rise in her chest. She thought of the village school. Beatrice could still close it. She could dismiss servants and punish anyone who helped Clara. Then Clara remembered the letter in her hand. Her father had asked Helena to trust her. I will remain with the Dowager Duchess tonight, Clara said. Beatrice stared at her. You do not know what you are doing. That may be true, but for once, the mistake will be mine. Silence filled the room. Adrian pulled the bell cord. When the butler entered, Adrian spoke without looking away from Beatrice. Prepare a guest room for Miss Whitmore. Certainly, Your Grace. Beatrice took one step toward Clara. Helena moved between them. The evening is over for you, Lady Beatrice. Beatrice's smile vanished. She turned and walked out. Lavinia followed, but paused near the door. Her gaze shifted from the brass key to the letter in Clara's hand. Then she disappeared into the corridor. Clara did not sleep well. At breakfast the next morning, Adrian had already arranged a carriage to the village church. Helena insisted on joining them. The winter road was hard with frost. Clara sat opposite Adrian, still wearing the repaired morning dress beneath a borrowed cloak. You should have told me about the school, Adrian said. Clara looked toward the window. Beatrice dislikes anything she cannot control. Does she control the school? She controls the money that buys its coal. For now, Adrian said. Clara turned back to him. He did not offer promises. He simply held her gaze, as though Beatrice's control were a problem that could be examined and solved. Reverend Hale met them outside the church. He was a small man with white hair and anxious eyes. When Clara showed him the key, relief crossed his face. Your father said you would come. He led them into the vestry and opened a locked cupboard. The shelf inside was empty. Reverend Hale went pale. It was here last night. Clara's stomach tightened. Who knew about it? A solicitor came yesterday afternoon, Mr. Silas Vane. He claimed Lady Beatrice had authorized him to collect Sir Edmund's papers. Did you give him the box? Adrian asked. No, he had no key. I refused. The Reverend knelt and examined the cupboard. Then he reached behind a stack of old prayer books. His hand emerged, holding a brown leather box. I moved it after he left. Clara released the breath she had been holding. The brass key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside lay several folded documents tied with black ribbon. Beneath them was a letter addressed to Clara. Her hands shook as she opened it. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, I failed to protect what your mother left you. Clara swallowed and continued. The documents included a property agreement for Rosemere Cottage, a list of trust payments, and records showing money that should have been placed in Clara's name. Several pages had been torn from one ledger. The final sheet contained only a few hurried lines. Beatrice has altered the accounts. I believe she is working with Silas Vane. If he learns that you found these papers, he will not merely take your inheritance. The sentence continued on the next line. Clara read it aloud. He will make the world believe that I am not fit to possess it. The warning from Sir Edmund changed the room. Clara stood beside the vestry table, holding the letter in both hands. Reverend Hale looked frightened. Helena looked angry. Adrian remained silent, but the stillness in his face felt more dangerous than any raised voice. Clara read the final sentence again. He will make the world believe that I am not fit to possess it. What does that mean? Helena asked. It means my father expected them to attack my character, Clara replied. Not only the documents. Adrian looked at the papers inside the box. Then we do not give them time. By noon, they were back at Blackthorn Hall. Adrian sent for Mr. Graham, the solicitor who handled the Blackthorn family's affairs. Clara sat at a long table in the library. Her father's documents were arranged before her. Mr. Graham examined the property agreement. This appears valid. Rosemere Cottage belonged to Lady Eleanor before her marriage. It was placed in trust for her only child. For Clara, Helena said. Yes, the trust becomes hers without supervision on her 25th birthday. Clara looked toward the mantel clock. 12 days from now. Until then, Lady Beatrice has temporary control. She has no right to sell the property or use the money for herself. Clara placed another document beside it. Then what is this? It was a deed transferring Rosemere Cottage to a merchant named Thomas Alder. Clara's signature appeared at the bottom. The date was 3 months earlier. Mr. Graham frowned. This claims you approved the sale. I have never met Thomas Alder. Could you have signed without understanding the paper? No. I know every document I sign. Adrian moved closer. The signature resembles yours. It resembles what someone remembers after watching me write. Clara took a fresh sheet of paper and wrote her name. She placed it beside the signature on the deed. My capital C begins below the line. This one begins above it. I also lift my pen before the final stroke in Whitmore. The person who wrote this did not. Clara held the deed toward the light. A faint crown appeared in the paper. The watermark belongs to Fletcher & Sons. The mill began using it last spring, but this deed claims it was prepared 18 months ago. Mr. Graham looked at Adrian. She is correct. Clara examined the ink. This ink dries with a blue edge. Silas Vane began ordering it after his usual supplier closed. You noticed his ink? Adrian asked. I answered his letters for my father. Mr. Graham sat back. This is enough to challenge the sale. It is not yet enough to prove who forged it. Clara folded her hands to hide their trembling. So Rosemere is still mine. For now, Mr. Graham said. But someone is working very hard to change that. While the solicitor organized the papers, Adrian picked up one report. I have seen this handwriting before. Clara recognized it. It is a report on the village school. These reports were sent to several landowners asking for winter donations, Adrian said. Beatrice claimed she wrote them, Helena added. Clara looked down. She signed them, but you prepared them, Adrian said. Clara did not answer. How long have you managed the school? Helena asked. 4 years. With what money? Small donations. Some from the church. Some from things I sold. What things? Adrian asked. A bracelet. 2 brooches. My mother's silver mirror. His expression hardened. And Lady Beatrice took the credit. The children still received coal. That does not make the theft less ugly. Clara met his eyes. It made the argument less important. No, Adrian said quietly. It made you believe your name mattered less than the work. The words reached deeper than Clara expected. The next morning, she took Adrian and Helena to the village school. The building stood behind the church. Wind slipped through gaps in the stone walls. Inside, 27 children shared narrow benches beside one iron stove. The moment Clara entered, several children ran toward her. Miss Clara! A little girl threw her arms around Clara's waist. Clara knelt and asked about her reading. A boy proudly showed her a repaired slate. Clara checked the coal supply and listened to the teacher's concerns. Adrian watched without speaking. An older widow named Mrs. Perry brought Clara the school accounts. We would have closed 2 winters ago without her, she told Adrian. She sold her last proper brooch when 3 families lost their fathers. Clara shook her head. That was not necessary to mention. It was necessary, Adrian said. On the journey back, the carriage wheels struck a deep rut. The horses startled. Clara leaned toward the open window and spoke to them in a low, steady voice. The animals calmed. Adrian watched her settle into her seat. You are very good at making frightened creatures feel safe. Does that include dukes? Clara asked. For the first time, he smiled. Then his expression changed. The smell of smoke still troubles me, he admitted, after the stable fire. Clara did not offer pity. Fear remembers what pride tries to forget. Adrian held her gaze. And you? I remember doors closing. When they returned to Blackthorn Hall, a newspaper waited on the entrance table. The headline accused Clara of wearing mourning clothes to attract the Duke's sympathy. It claimed she had stolen documents from her stepmother and was using them to force a marriage. Before anyone could speak, the front doors opened. A local magistrate entered with 2 officers. He removed his hat and looked directly at Clara. Miss Whitmore, I have an order to search your room. Clara looked at the magistrate. May I see the order? The question surprised him. He handed her the folded paper. Clara read it carefully. Lady Beatrice had reported that financial records were stolen from Whitmore House. She claimed the missing documents might be hidden among Clara's belongings. Adrian stepped beside Clara. No one searches a guest's room in my house without my solicitor present. The magistrate shifted uneasily. Your Grace, I am required to carry out the order. And you will, Clara said. Adrian turned toward her. You do not have to allow this. Yes, I do. Clara gave the order back to the magistrate. If we prevent the search, Beatrice will say I am hiding behind your title. Let them examine the room. Adrian's jaw tightened. but he nodded. Mr. Graham will witness everything. They climbed the main staircase together. 2 officers followed the magistrate. Helena walked beside Clara, while Adrian remained close behind them. Clara's guest room looked exactly as she had left it. Her borrowed dresses hung inside the wardrobe. Her father's letter was locked in Adrian's study, and the brass key remained in Clara's pocket. The officers began with the writing desk. They opened drawers, examined books, and lifted the mattress. Clara watched every movement. One officer knelt beside the wardrobe. "There is something here." He reached beneath the lowest shelf and pulled out a bundle wrapped in brown paper. A red wax seal held it closed. The magistrate looked at Clara. "Do you recognize this?" "No." He broke the seal. Inside were receipts, bank notices, and several pages from the Whitmore household accounts. Mr. Graham stepped forward. "These appear to be the missing documents." Helena drew a sharp breath. Adrian's voice became cold. "Someone placed them there." The magistrate looked uncomfortable. "That may be difficult to prove." "Then allow me to examine them," Clara said. He hesitated before placing the bundle on the desk. Clara did not touch the papers immediately. "Who found them?" "Officer Briggs." "And who entered the room before the search?" The housekeeper answered from the doorway. "Only the maid who lit the fire this morning." "Was the wardrobe locked?" "No, miss." Clara bent closer to the broken seal. The wax was dark red. A faint, sweet smell rose from it. "Cinnamon," Clara said. The magistrate frowned. "What?" "This sealing wax contains cinnamon oil. Lavinia uses it on her personal letters because she dislikes the smell of plain wax." "That proves very little," the magistrate replied. "Then we should examine the paper." Clara lifted one receipt by its edge. "The pages are too clean. The Whitmore account room has a coal stove that covers everything with fine grey dust. Documents stored there for months would not look like this." She pointed to the heading on another page. "This receipt is from Palmer and Reed." Mr. Graham read the date. 18 months ago. "The shop was not called Palmer and Reed then," Clara said. "Mr. Reed became a partner 6 months ago. Before that, it was simply Palmer's." The magistrate examined the page again. "So the receipt was created recently and given an older date?" "Yes." Clara looked at the officers. "Whoever prepared these papers expected you to find them. They did not expect anyone to read them." A young maid stood in the corridor, twisting her apron between her hands. Clara recognized her as Lucy, one of the servants assigned to the East Wing. "Lucy," Clara said gently. "Did you see anyone near this room?" The girl went pale. "No, miss." The housekeeper glanced at her. Lucy lowered her head. Clara understood the fear in that movement. "You will not be punished for telling the truth," Clara said. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Lady Lavinia came upstairs yesterday evening. She said she had lost an earring." "Did she enter this room?" Lucy swallowed. "Yes, miss. I saw her come out. She told me that if I spoke of it, Lady Beatrice would make certain no household hired me again." The magistrate closed the bundle. "This room is no longer evidence against Miss Whitmore. It may be evidence against Lady Lavinia." Adrian looked toward the door. "Have someone bring her here." "She has already left the estate," the housekeeper said. "Lady Beatrice's carriage collected her before breakfast." Clara was not surprised. The trap had failed, but Beatrice would already be preparing another. That evening, rain struck the library windows. Clara sat with her father's documents, while Adrian stood near the fire. "You should have let me stop the search," he said. "And what would people have believed?" "I do not care what they believe." "I do." Clara looked up at him. "Not because I need their approval. Because Beatrice has spent years making others doubt me. I will not give her another shadow to hide behind." Adrian's anger softened. "You stood there while they searched your clothes and waited for them to make a mistake. I knew they would. You sound certain. Cruel people are often careless. They believe humiliation will prevent anyone from examining the details." A knock interrupted them. Cecily entered the library wearing a wet traveling cloak. Her hair had come loose, and her face was white with fear. Helena hurried toward her. "What happened?" Cecily looked at Clara. "I need to tell you the truth." She removed a folded page from inside her glove. It was a draft of the newspaper story accusing Clara of stealing documents and pursuing Adrian. Corrections had been written in Beatrice's hand. Cecily's voice shook. "Mother ordered Lavinia to hide the records in your room. She said the magistrate would find them before you had time to defend yourself." Clara stared at the page. "How long have you known?" since the night of the ball. And you said nothing. I was afraid. So was Lucy. Cecily flinched. Clara folded the draft and placed it on the desk. I cannot pretend your silence did no harm. I know. If you want to help me, you must repeat this before the magistrate. You must say it where your mother can hear you. Cecily closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she nodded. I will. Then she gripped the back of a chair. There is something worse. Mother and Mr. Vane are meeting a buyer at Rosemere tomorrow morning. They plan to complete the sale before your birthday. Clara rose so quickly that her chair struck the floor. Cecily's final words were barely louder than the rain. Once the papers are signed, they intend to leave England. Within 20 minutes, the courtyard of Blackthorn Hall was filled with movement. Lanterns were lit. Horses were harnessed. Mr. Graham sent a messenger to wake the local magistrate. Adrian entered the library wearing a dark riding coat. You will remain here with my mother. Clara folded her father's documents and placed them inside a leather case. No. Rosemere may already be occupied by Vane's men. Rosemere belongs to me. That is exactly why you should not place yourself in danger. Clara fastened the case. If I stay behind, Beatrice will say you acted without my permission. Vane will claim that I do not understand the transaction. I must be there. Adrian stared at her. Clara expected another argument. Instead, he gave a short nod. Then you ride in my carriage. The magistrate joined them at the front steps. Mr. Graham brought the trust agreement and the forged deed. Cecily remained with Helena under the protection of the Blackthorn household. The carriage left just before midnight. Rain had stopped, but the road was slick with mud. The wheels struck deep ruts as they traveled through the darkness. Clara sat opposite Adrian. Neither of them spoke for several miles. At last, Adrian said, You should not have to fight this hard for something that was already yours. Clara looked through the window at the passing trees. People like Beatrice depend on exhaustion. They take a little at a time and wait for you to become too tired to object. And are you tired? Yes. She looked back at him. But I am still objecting. A faint expression crossed his face. It was not quite a smile, but it warmed his eyes. They reached Rosemere shortly before dawn. The cottage was larger than its name suggested. It stood beyond a line of bare oak trees, with pale stone walls and dark windows. Clara had spent her earliest years there with her mother. Now, lights burned in the front rooms. A second carriage waited near the entrance. They are still here, Clara said. Adrian opened the carriage door. Stay beside me. I will stay beside the evidence. Mr. Graham almost smiled. The front door was unlocked. Voices came from the drawing room. Silas Vane stood beside a table covered with papers. A heavy-set merchant sat across from him. Lady Beatrice stood near the fire, wearing the same controlled expression she used in church. Lavinia was beside her. The emerald bracelet on her wrist flashed in the firelight. Silas looked up. His surprise lasted only a moment. Your Grace, this is private business. Adrian entered the room. You are attempting to sell property that does not belong to your client. Beatrice turned toward Clara. You should be ashamed of yourself, arriving in the middle of the night with armed men. We brought a magistrate, Clara said. Not armed men. The merchant rose from his chair. I was told Lady Beatrice had full authority. She does not, Mr. Graham replied. He placed the original trust agreement on the table. Silas reached for the forged deed. Clara moved faster and covered it with her hand. This document carries my name. I will examine it. You have already approved the sale, Silas said. No. Someone copied my signature. The magistrate stepped closer. Until ownership is determined, no transfer will take place. The merchant gathered his coat and left without saying goodbye. Beatrice's calm expression cracked. You have ruined a lawful agreement. Clara looked around the room. Rosemere had changed. Her mother's blue curtains were gone. Several paintings had been removed. Boxes stood near the walls, ready for transport. You were emptying the house before the sale was complete. This property has expenses, Beatrice replied. Silas quietly moved toward a side door. Adrian blocked his path. Where are you going? To retrieve additional documents. A faint smell reached Clara. Burning paper. She turned toward the fireplace. Beneath the logs, the edge of a ledger page curled in the flames. He is destroying the accounts. Silas lunged for the fire poker. Adrian caught his wrist and forced him away from the hearth. Mr. Graham used the iron tongs to pull the burning book onto the stone floor. The magistrate stamped out the flames. Several pages had already turned to ash. Others remained attached to the blackened spine. Clara knelt beside the damaged ledger. Blue lines divided the columns. She recognized the format used by the Whitmore Bank. One surviving page listed payments from the Eleanor Trust. The money had been transferred to a company called Vane and Marsh. Mr. Graham read over her shoulder. "This company belongs to you." Silas said nothing. Clara turned another scorched page. Several payments had been used to settle Beatrice's dressmaker bills. Another had paid for Lavinia's jewelry. Clara looked at the emerald bracelet. "That was purchased with money from my mother's trust." Lavinia covered the bracelet with her other hand. "Mother gave it to me, with money that was not hers." Beatrice stepped forward. "Everything I did was for this family." "No," Clara said. "Everything you did was to keep the family dependent on you." Silas suddenly pulled free from Adrian and reached for the ledger. The magistrate's officers seized him before he could destroy it. "This proves nothing," Silas said. "Sir Edmund knew Clara could not manage an estate. He approved every payment." "Then show us his written approval," Clara replied. Silas looked toward Beatrice. Neither of them answered. The magistrate ordered the documents seized. Silas was placed under guard until the accounts could be reviewed. As the first grey light entered the windows, Clara stepped outside. Rosemere stood before her in the cold dawn. The garden was neglected, but the old stone path remained. She remembered walking there while holding her mother's hand. The memory broke something inside her. Tears filled her eyes. Adrian came to stand several feet away. He did not reach for her. "Would you like me to leave?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "Would you like me to stay?" She looked at him, then held out her hand. Adrian took it gently. For a moment, they stood without speaking. Mr. Graham called from the doorway. "There is another entry in the ledger." Clara wiped her eyes and returned inside. The final page showed a large payment, made days before her father's death. It had gone to Dr. Henry Vale. Clara stared at the name. "He treated my father during his final illness." Mr. Graham examined the date. The payment was made before Dr. Vale signed the death certificate. Clara felt Adrian's hand tighten around hers. She looked at the burned ledger. Dr. Vale was the man who declared my father dead. Dr. Henry Vale arrived at Blackthorn Hall the following afternoon. He was a narrow man with silver hair and restless hands. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. When the magistrate showed him the burned ledger, the doctor's face lost its color. Clara sat across from him in the library. Adrian stood near the fireplace. Mr. Graham had arranged the surviving account pages beside Sir Edmund's letter. "You received a large payment from Silas Vane," Clara said. "3 days before my father died." Dr. Vale looked at the floor. "It was a professional fee." "For what service?" "I attended Sir Edmund during his final illness." "You had already been paid for that." The doctor rubbed his thumb against one cuff. Adrian's voice was cold. "Answer her." Dr. Vale looked toward the magistrate. "I did not kill Sir Edmund." Clara's breath caught, but she kept her voice steady. "No one accused you of murder." "You were thinking it." "I was thinking that a man who accepts secret money usually has something to hide." Dr. Vale closed his eyes. "Your father's heart was failing. Nothing I did caused his death. He had suffered 2 previous attacks. The third one killed him. Then why did Vane pay you?" The doctor remained silent for several seconds. He wanted the death certificate completed quickly. He wanted no formal questions about Sir Edmund's condition during his final days. Mr. Graham leaned forward. "Because Sir Edmund was attempting to alter the management of Clara's trust." Dr. Vale nodded. "Sir Edmund asked me to confirm that he remained mentally capable. He wanted to remove Lady Beatrice and Mr. Vane from all authority over the estate." "Did you examine him?" Clara asked. "Yes. His mind was perfectly clear." "And did you record it?" "I drafted a statement, but before I could lodge it with the local registry, Sir Edmund passed away." Dr. Vale looked deeply ashamed. "Mr. Vane arrived hours later. He took the draft and burned it. He paid me to swear the medical examination never happened." Clara felt the old anger rise inside her. "You sold your silence while my father was barely cold." "I had debts," the doctor whispered. "Vane promised to settle them, claiming it was merely a private family disagreement. My father trusted you." The doctor lowered his head. "I know." The magistrate ordered him to provide a sworn statement. Dr. Vale agreed and named the clerk who had witnessed Sir Edmund's examination. There had been no murder. The truth brought Clara relief, but not peace. Her father had spent his final days trying to protect her. Beatrice and Vane had not caused his death, but they had used it before his body was cold. After the doctor left, Helena asked Clara to join her in the morning room. A small wooden box waited beside the tea service. "I should have shown you these sooner," Helena said. She opened the box and removed several old letters tied with a blue ribbon. The handwriting belonged to Eleanor. Clara touched the top page. "My mother wrote these. For nearly 15 years. Helena handed her one letter. Eleanor had written about Rosemere, Clara's childhood, and the stable fire that had nearly killed Adrian. Near the bottom of the page, one sentence made Clara stop. "I hope Adrian never mistakes gratitude for obligation. No child should grow beneath the weight of a debt he did not choose." Clara read it again. Helena watched her. "Adrian has never forgotten what Eleanor did, so everything he has done may be repayment." "No," Helena said, "but I cannot decide what you believe." That evening, Clara found Adrian alone in the library. He stood beside the window, looking toward the dark gardens. "I read my mother's letters," Clara said. He turned. "She wrote about the fire. I expected she might. She also wrote about the debt you believed you owed her." Adrian's expression became guarded. "I was 9 years old. She entered a burning stable and carried me out. And now you are protecting her daughter. I am protecting you because Beatrice and Vane tried to steal from you. Would you have done all of this if my mother had never saved you?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. Clara wanted to believe him. She also knew how easily gratitude could resemble affection when both were wrapped in kindness. Adrian crossed the room. "The newspaper has published another accusation. Mr. Graham believes the scandal will continue even after the property hearing. I expected that. There is a way to end it." Clara saw the decision in his face before he spoke. "Marry me." The words were quiet. There was no audience, and no dramatic gesture. Adrian continued. "My name would protect yours. Beatrice could no longer claim authority over you. No newspaper would dare describe the Duchess of Ashbourne as an unstable dependent." Clara's chest tightened. "You are offering me protection. I am offering you everything I have. Because my mother saved your life. Because you walked into my ballroom wearing a dress designed to humiliate you, and you still refuse to lower your head. That is not the same as love." His jaw tightened. "No, it is only the beginning of it." Clara looked away. For years, Beatrice had made every act of kindness feel like a debt. Food, shelter, and money were always followed by a demand. Clara could not build a marriage on the fear that she owed Adrian for rescuing her. "I cannot accept." He became very still. "Do you believe I pity you? I believe you care for me. But I do not know whether you see Clara Whitmore or the daughter of the woman who saved you." Adrian stepped closer. "I see the woman who remembered the names of 27 children. I see the woman who allowed officers to search her room because she refused to hide behind my title. I see the woman who offered Cecily a path toward honesty when anger would have been easier." Clara's eyes burned. "Then let me finish this as that woman. What are you asking? Stand beside me. Do not stand in front of me. Let me regain Rosemere and clear my name before I answer any proposal." Adrian held her gaze. Then he nodded. "You have my word." The property hearing was scheduled for 3 days later at Blackthorn Hall. The magistrate summoned Beatrice, Lavinia, Silas Vane, Dr. Vale, Reverend Hale, and the servants who had witnessed the planted documents. Clara decided she would wear the mourning dress again. This time, she would not wear it as a symbol of shame. The night before the hearing, a servant entered the library carrying a sealed message from Whitmore House. Clara broke it open. The note contained only one sentence. "Cecily is gone, and so is the original draft of Lady Beatrice's newspaper letter." Clara read the message again. "Cecily is gone, and so is the original draft of Lady Beatrice's newspaper letter." Adrian took the note from her. "Who delivered this?" "A stable boy from Whitmore House," the servant replied. "He said Lady Cecily was taken home before sunset." Clara looked toward the clock. The property hearing would begin in less than 12 hours. "Beatrice discovered she intended to testify," Clara said. Adrian reached for his coat. "I will bring her back." "No, we will bring the magistrate." He paused. Clara folded the message. "If you enter Whitmore House as an angry duke, Beatrice will claim you threatened her family. We need Cecily to leave by her own choice, in front of a lawful witness." Adrian studied her for a moment. "Beside you," he said. Not in front of me. A servant announced another visitor before they could leave. An elderly woman stood in the entrance hall, wearing a plain brown cloak. Snow had gathered across her shoulders. Clara recognized the careful posture before she recognized the face. "Mrs. Bell!" The old seamstress opened her arms. Clara crossed the hall and embraced her. "I heard about the dress," Mrs. Bell said. "And the key. You placed it in the hem. Your father asked me to. He believed Lady Beatrice was searching your room." Mrs. Bell explained that Sir Edmund had hidden the key only days before his death. He chose the mourning gown because Beatrice hated old clothing and would never examine it closely. "After the funeral, she dismissed me," Mrs. Bell continued. "She thought I knew where he had hidden the documents." "Do you know where Cecily may be held?" Clara asked. Mrs. Bell's expression changed. "There is a small room beside Lady Beatrice's private sitting room. It was once used for storing linens. The door locks from the outside." Adrian's face hardened. Mrs. Bell touched Clara's arm. "There is also an old servants' passage behind the west staircase. Lady Beatrice sealed the main entrance years ago, but the garden door may still open." They left Blackthorn Hall with the magistrate and 2 officers. Mrs. Bell travelled with them to show the way. Whitmore House was dark when they arrived. No servant answered the front door. The magistrate knocked again. "Lady Beatrice, open this door." No one responded. Mrs. Bell led them around the house. Ivy covered the old garden entrance. Adrian forced the rusted latch, but he waited until the magistrate entered first. The passage smelled of dust and damp stone. Clara followed the narrow corridor toward a line of light beneath a door. Voices came from the room beyond it. "You will sign the statement," Beatrice said. Cecily answered, but her voice shook. "No. You will tell the magistrate that Clara frightened you. You will say she wrote the newspaper letter herself." "I will not." A sharp sound struck the silence. Clara stopped breathing. Then Cecily spoke again. "You do not love us." Beatrice laughed coldly. "Everything I have done was for you and Lavinia. You used us. You wanted Lavinia to marry a duke, and you wanted me to remain quiet. You are a foolish girl." "No, I was a frightened one." The magistrate opened the door. Beatrice turned from the locked linen room. Her hand was still raised. Cecily stood inside with one cheek burning red. "Lady Beatrice," the magistrate said, "step away from her." Beatrice recovered quickly. "My daughter is unwell. Clara has filled her mind with lies." Clara entered the room. Cecily looked at her. "I did not sign anything." "I heard you," Clara said. Beatrice pointed toward the officers. "You have no right to invade my home. We came for a witness who was being prevented from attending a legal hearing," the magistrate replied. Cecily removed one glove. A folded strip of paper was hidden inside the lining. "Mother burned the original draft," she said, "but I copied it before I left Blackthorn Hall." The paper contained the same accusations sent to the newspaper. Notes in the margin described Clara as unstable, dishonest, and desperate to force Adrian into marriage. At the bottom were Silas Vane's initials. Beatrice stared at Cecily. "You have destroyed your own family." "No," Cecily said. "I stopped helping you destroy Clara." Lavinia appeared in the doorway, wearing a traveling dress. Her eyes moved from the magistrate to the officers. "I had nothing to do with this." Clara looked at her. "You placed the false records in my room." "Mother told me to." "You poured the wine." "That was only a joke. You tried to turn me into one." Lavinia's confidence weakened. "If I tell the magistrate everything, will the Duke protect me?" Adrian did not answer for Clara. Clara stepped closer. "You may tell the truth at the hearing. You may accept responsibility for what you did. But there will be no private agreement." Lavinia looked toward her mother. For the first time, fear replaced the arrogance in her face. By dawn, Cecily was safe at Blackthorn Hall. Mrs. Bell repaired the torn morning dress in Clara's room. She strengthened the hem, but left the faded wine stain visible. "Some marks should not be hidden," Mrs. Bell said. Helena opened a velvet box and removed a small silver brooch, shaped like a rose, surrounded by thorns. "Your mother gave this to me after the fire." She fastened it at Clara's throat. Adrian waited near the door. Clara turned toward him. He did not tell her she looked beautiful. "Tomorrow," he said, "they will finally have to see you." The hearing began that morning in the great hall. The magistrate sat at the head of a long table. Witnesses filled the room. Beatrice entered last, dressed in black silk, as though she were the injured party. She carried a sealed letter. "This document," Beatrice announced, "proves Clara attempted to extort her father before his death." She placed it before the magistrate. Then she looked at Clara and smiled. "Your precious mourning dress will not save you this time." Beatrice placed the sealed letter on the table. The great hall became silent. Clara stood opposite her in the repaired mourning dress. The faded wine stain remained near the hem. Her mother's silver rose rested at her throat. The magistrate opened the letter. He read it once, then looked at Clara. "This appears to be addressed to Sir Edmund. It demands control of Rosemere and threatens to expose private family matters if he refuses." Beatrice pressed a hand to her chest. "I found it among my late husband's papers. I kept it hidden to protect Clara." Clara held out her hand. "May I examine it?" The magistrate gave her the page. The handwriting resembled hers. The shape of each word had been copied carefully. Even the signature looked convincing from a distance. Clara studied the paper. "This letter is false." Beatrice sighed. "You deny everything placed before you." "I examine everything placed before me." Clara lifted the page toward the window. "The watermark belongs to Fletcher & Sons. This paper was made last year." The magistrate checked the date on the letter. "It claims to have been written 3 years ago." "Yes." Clara placed the letter beside a genuine note she had written to Reverend Hale. "My capital C begins below the line. The C on this letter begins above it. The final stroke of Whitmore is also continuous. I always lift my pen." Mr. Graham examined both signatures. "She is correct." Clara pointed to the opening sentence. "It also refers to Rosemere Estate. I have never called it that. My mother called it Rosemere Cottage, and so did my father." Beatrice's face tightened. "These are desperate excuses." "There is one more detail," Clara said. She held the letter near the lamp. "The ink has a blue edge. It is the same ink used in Silas Vane's office." All eyes turned towards Silas. He sat beside an officer with his wrists restrained. His expression remained calm, but a pulse moved quickly in his temple. "I use a common ink," he said. "Then perhaps the witnesses can help us." Mrs. Bell stepped forward first. She described Sir Edmund's final request. She explained how she had sewn the brass key into the mourning dress because Beatrice was searching Clara's room. Reverend Hale confirmed that Sir Edmund had left the locked box at the church. He also testified that Silas had tried to collect it without the key. The bank manager presented the surviving transfer records. Money from Eleanor's trust had passed through Vane and Marsh. It had paid Beatrice's debts, Lavinia's dresses, and the emerald bracelet she wore at the ball. Lavinia looked down at her bare wrist. Dr. Vale then admitted that Silas had paid him to hide Sir Edmund's final medical statement. The statement had confirmed that Sir Edmund remained mentally capable when he tried to remove Beatrice and Silas from the trust. Each witness added another stone to the wall closing around them. Beatrice remained upright. "You are listening to servants, debtors, and frightened girls. Clara has turned them against me." The young maid named Lucy stepped forward. "I saw Lady Lavinia leave Miss Clara's room before the false records were found." Lavinia shook her head. "She is lying." The magistrate placed the bundle of planted documents on the table. The seal contained cinnamon oil. "The same wax was found among your personal writing supplies." Lavinia looked toward her mother. Beatrice did not look back. Cecily rose from her chair. Her cheek still carried a faint mark from Beatrice's hand. "I heard Mother order Lavinia to place the documents in Clara's room." Beatrice turned on her. "You confused a private conversation." "No." Cecily placed the copied newspaper draft before the magistrate. "This is the story Mother and Mr. Vane prepared before the ball. They planned to describe Clara as unstable after the Duke rejected her." The magistrate read the notes in the margin. One instruction said to emphasize Clara's age and desperation. Another suggested calling the mourning dress a theatrical attempt to attract pity. Clara looked at Lavinia. "Who spilled the wine?" Lavinia's lips trembled. "It was an accident." "And who trapped the hem beneath her shoe?" No one moved. Clara's voice remained calm. "You told the room that night was only a joke. Say it again now." Lavinia looked at Adrian, but he gave her no rescue. At last, she whispered, "Mother said the Duke would have you removed. She said everyone would laugh. Did you place the records in my room?" Lavinia closed her eyes. "Yes." Beatrice's face turned entirely to stone. She did not raise her voice, but her eyes were lethal. "You weak, foolish girl. Do not let them confuse you. Lavinia stared at her mother, seeing the absolute lack of warmth. She looked at the cinnamon wax on the table, then at Clara. I will not ruin myself for you any more, Lavinia whispered, her voice breaking. She turned to the magistrate. It was all her plan. The dress, the wine, the false letters, and the documents planted in Clara's room. She orchestrated everything.
So Tilly.
A shocked murmur moved through the hall. Beatrice turned toward Clara. I gave you a home for 12 years. You used money from my trust to maintain that home, Clara replied. I fed you. With my money. I protected you from a world you were too foolish to understand. No. You isolated me so I would never discover what belonged to me. Beatrice's face twisted. You would be nothing without the Duke standing behind you. Clara took the original trust agreement from Mr. Graham. The court has already suspended your authority. Rosemere and my mother's trust have been returned to my control. She placed the document on the table. His Grace did not give me my name. He was simply the first person in your world who did not try to take it from me. The magistrate struck his gavel, his decision clear. Silas Vane, you are under arrest for forgery and fraud. You will be held for trial at the next assizes. The officers immediately bound Vane's wrists. The magistrate then turned to Beatrice. Lady Beatrice, given the overwhelming evidence of financial misconduct, I am issuing an immediate injunction. Your control over the Whitmore accounts is suspended, pending a full review by the Court of Chancery. Lady Lavinia will face a formal inquiry regarding the planted documents. Whitmore House would be examined to determine how much of it had been maintained with Clara's stolen funds. Beatrice's social friends quietly moved away from her. No one offered her a chair. After the hearing, Clara stepped onto the balcony. Cold air touched her face. For the first time, the morning dress did not feel heavy. Adrian joined her with his coat over one arm. He did not place it around her. May I? He asked. Clara smiled. Yes. He settled the warm coat over her shoulders. I meant what I said before, Adrian told her. My proposal remains. But this time, I offer no title, protection, or property as an argument. Clara looked up at him. Then what are you offering? Only myself. He took her hand. I am not asking whether you need me, Clara. I am asking whether you want me beside you. Clara looked down at Adrian's hand around hers. For most of her life, every offer of safety had hidden a price. Beatrice had called obedience gratitude. Silas had called theft management. Even shelter had been used to remind Clara that she possessed nothing of her own. Adrian was asking for something different. He was asking her to choose. I do want you beside me, Clara said. Hope appeared in his eyes, but she lifted one finger before he could speak. Not because you are a duke. I had feared the title might be my finest quality, and not because my mother saved you. His expression became serious. I understand. Clara stepped closer. I want the man who asked permission before placing a coat around my shoulders. I want the man who allowed me to refuse him without punishing me. I want the man who stood beside me while I reclaimed my own name. Adrian's voice softened. And do you want that man as your husband? Clara smiled. Yes. He kissed her on the balcony beneath the winter sky. It was not a desperate kiss or a public performance. It was warm, careful, and full of a promise neither of them needed to speak aloud. They did not announce their engagement that day. Clara first returned to Rosemere. For several weeks, she worked with Mr. Graham and the magistrate to recover the stolen funds. She reviewed every account herself. Adrian attended when she requested his help, but he never sat at the head of the table. That seat belonged to Clara. The investigation revealed that Beatrice had spent nearly half of Eleanor's trust. Whitmore House had been maintained with Clara's money, along with Lavinia's clothing, jewelry, and failed attempts to enter wealthy social circles. The court removed Beatrice from the house. She was forced to sell her jewels, her private carriage, and most of the furniture she claimed as her own. The proceeds were returned to Clara's trust. Beatrice moved to a small rented cottage outside Bath. Her finances were placed under legal supervision, which meant she could no longer borrow money or sign contracts without approval. The women who once crowded around her at dinners stopped answering her letters. For the first time, Beatrice lived without servants, admiration, or anyone left to frighten. Lavinia's expected marriage ended within a week. Her suitor's family discovered that her promised dowry had been taken from Clara's inheritance. They withdrew the proposal before the engagement could be announced. Lavinia avoided prison by confessing her role in placing the false documents. She returned the jewelry purchased with Clara's money and gave evidence against Silas. She left London with Beatrice. The society pages that had once mocked Clara printed Lavinia's disgrace instead. Clara found no pleasure in the cruelty of those articles, but she did not interfere. Lavinia had once wanted Clara to lose her name before an entire ballroom. Now she understood what it meant to be judged by her own choices. Silas Vane received no such mercy. The records taken from Rosemere led investigators to other trusts he had managed. Several widows and young heirs discovered that their money had also been stolen. Silas was convicted of forgery, fraud, destruction of evidence, and conspiracy. His property was seized to repay his victims. He was sentenced to many years in prison. The respectable solicitor, who once believed no young woman could understand his paperwork, was defeated by the details he assumed Clara would never notice. Dr. Vale lost his position after admitting that he accepted payment to conceal Sir Edmund's statement. He avoided prison because he cooperated with the investigation, but he was forbidden from practicing medicine in the county. Cecily chose not to follow her mother. Clara did not offer instant forgiveness. Instead, she offered Cecily honest work at the village school. "You will receive a salary," Clara told her. "You will answer to the headmistress, not to me. If you remain, it must be because you are willing to earn trust." Cecily accepted. She began by cleaning classrooms, organizing supplies, and helping younger children learn their letters. The work was difficult, and no one praised her for doing what was expected. She stayed. Over time, fear disappeared from her voice. Years later, she married a village doctor who admired her courage and knew the truth about her past. Mrs. Bell became the manager of a sewing room established at Rosemere. She trained widows and abandoned women to make clothing for wages they controlled themselves. Lucy, the maid who testified against Lavinia, received a position in Helena's household and enough money to support her younger brother. The village school received a permanent supply of coal. No child there spent another winter learning with numb fingers. Clara and Adrian were married in spring. The ceremony took place in the small church beside Rosemere. Clara wore an ivory gown made by Mrs. Bell. Around the sleeves, black thread formed roses surrounded by thorns. The embroidery had been taken from Eleanor's mourning dress. Adrian wore the same formal coat he had placed around Clara's shoulders at the ball. Helena cried openly. Mrs. Bell cried more loudly. Cecily stood beside Clara and held the flowers with steady hands. After the wedding, Clara kept Rosemere in her own name. She and Adrian transformed part of the property into a school and a temporary home for women who had nowhere safe to go. Every resident received food, training, and wages. No one was expected to repay kindness with obedience. One winter evening, nearly a year after the ball, Clara sat in the Rosemere library, reviewing the school accounts. Adrian waited beside the fire. He insisted he was not tired, but within minutes, his eyes closed. A book rested open against his chest. Clara watched him sleep. The hard lines in his face had softened. His coat hung across the back of a chair. She remembered the ballroom, the spilled wine, and the laughter that died when he stepped forward. Clara lifted the coat and placed it gently over his shoulders. Adrian opened one eye. "Are you finally finished with those accounts?" "Almost. You have said almost for an hour. A duchess has responsibilities. A duke also has responsibilities." Clara raised an eyebrow. "What responsibility requires me to leave my desk?" Adrian caught her hand and pulled her toward the chair beside him, keeping her husband company. Clara laughed and rested her head against his shoulder. Outside, snow began to fall over Rosemere. Inside, the fire burned steadily. The school accounts could wait 10 more minutes. Years earlier, Beatrice had sent Clara to a ballroom in a mourning dress to prove that she belonged nowhere. Instead, that dress carried the key to everything Beatrice had stolen. It led Clara back to her mother's home, her rightful inheritance, and the truth about her own strength. Good people did not always receive justice quickly. Sometimes they were mocked. Sometimes they were betrayed. Sometimes they had to fight for what should never have been taken. But Clara had remained kind without remaining silent. In the end, the cruel lost the power they had abused. The frightened found the courage to change. The honest were rewarded. And the woman sent to a ball as a joke became the heart of a home where no one would ever be treated as one again.